asset in the world will be there. And if you don't show up, we'll just nuke this ranch from orbit." He bit down on a capsule in his tooth and went limp, a forced disconnect from his neural link. The stealth jet above let out a roar and vanished into the night. "They're serious, El," Jack said, looking at the unconscious agents. "We can't stay here."
"The ranch is a target as long as Teddy is on it."
Eleanor looked at Teddy. The dog trotted over and licked her hand, his eyes back to their normal, warm brown. He looked like a regular dog again, but Eleanor knew the truth now. He was the most dangerous and most precious dog on the planet. "Pack the gear, Jax," Eleanor said, her voice deadly calm. "We're going to the Alps. If they want a collection, we'll give them one. We're going to jailbreak every asset they've got." She looked at Cyclone, who was standing tall in the moonlight. "And we're taking the big guy. If we're going to the mountains, we need a tank." "But El," Jax asked, "how are we going to get a horse and a biodog to Switzerland without getting flagged by customs?" Eleanor pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. "Remember my old friend from the underground days? The one who specializes in ghost flights? It's time to call in a favor." Here is part 8 of the Silver Ranch saga. We are moving from the dusty ranch to the freezing high-stakes peaks of the Swiss Alps. The vibe is cold, but the action is straight fire. The Silver Ranch, Untamed Spirit Part 8. The Swiss Alps were built different. The air was so thin and cold, it felt like inhaling liquid nitrogen, and the jagged peaks looked like frozen giants guarding the world's darkest secrets. Eleanor, Jax, and the GO8 squad had arrived via a ghost flight, a radar-invisible cargo plane piloted by one of Eleanor's old contacts from her Don't Ask, Don't Tell past. "Keep your head down, Jax," Eleanor whispered, adjusting her high-tech thermal parka. "We're not in Kansas anymore. This is the Wolf's backyard." They were at the base camp of the Midnight Mountain Marathon. On the surface, it looked like a playground for the ultra-rich, luxury chalets, private helipads, and athletes wearing gear that cost more than a Ferrari. But underneath the glitz, the energy was heavy. "El, my scanners are peaking," Jax whispered, staring at his modified tablet. "Every single horse and dog in this camp is emitting a low-frequency signal. It's not just Teddy. This whole race is a showroom for bioengineered weapons." Teddy was wearing a custom-made stealth vest that masked his Neuralink signal. He was walking with a slight limp, a fake-out move Eleanor taught him to make the scouts think he was just a regular old dog. Cyclone, however, was impossible to hide. The big black stallion stood out among the dainty Arabians like a monster truck at a ballet. "Look at that unit," sneered a rider passing by. It was a tall, icy woman with a silver prosthetic arm. "That's the ranch stallion. He's mid at best. He'll freeze before he hits the first glacier." "Keep that same energy when we lap you on the summit, sweetheart," Eleanor shot back, not even breaking her stride. That night, the squad gathered in a secluded stable at the edge of the camp. "Okay, here's the tea," Eleanor said, laying out a holographic map Jax had hacked from the local server. "The race starts at midnight. It's a 50-mile climb to the Peak of Shadows. But the finish line isn't a trophy stand. It's a massive underground lab hidden inside the mountain. The Wolf plans to recall all the assets at the finish line," Jax added. "Once the horses and dogs cross that line, a kill switch activates their neural links, and they become total drones. They'll never come home." "Not if we glitch the system first," Eleanor said, her eyes turning into steel. Just then, Teddy let out a low, warning growl. He looked toward the stable door. A man stepped out of the shadows. He wasn't wearing tactical gear or a suit. He was wearing an old, tattered mountain coat and holding a carved wooden staff. "You are brave to come here, Eleanor," the man said. His voice sounded like grinding stones. "I am Klaus, the original architect of Project Chimera. I helped build that dog before the wolf turned my work into a nightmare. Then help us delete it, Eleanor said, keeping her hand on her holster. I cannot stop the wolf, Klaus said, looking at Teddy with a mix of pride and sadness. But I can give you the master key. It's a code that will unlock the free will of every animal in the race. But it can only be broadcast from the comm tower at the very top of the peak. So we have to win the race and hack a military-grade tower while dodging a literal army? Jax asked, looking shook. Basically, Eleanor smirked. Just another Tuesday for us. Midnight hit. The starting gun echoed through the valley like a cannon blast. 40 riders charged into the freezing dark. The trail was a nightmare. Slick ice, 1,000-foot drops, and winds that could yeet a car off the mountain. Eleanor and Cyclone moved like a shadow. Cyclone's hooves were fitted with custom ice picks, and he climbed the vertical slopes with the power of a locomotive. Teddy was out front, his predictive eyes seeing the cracks in the ice before they even formed. "We're in the top 3, El," Jax yelled over the radio from his hidden base camp. "But the Silver Arm Lady is cheating. Her horse has jet propulsion boosters in its shoes." "Let her flex," Eleanor muttered. "We've got natural torque." As they reached the 10,000-foot mark, the Wolf's security team finally dropped the act. 3 black attack helicopters rose from the mist, their searchlights pinning Eleanor against the white snow. "Target confirmed. Liquidate the rider. Capture the dog," the pilot boomed. Rat-tat-tat-tat. Machine gun fire kicked up the snow around Cyclone's hooves. "Oh, you want to play Call of Duty in real life?" Eleanor yelled. She pulled a heavy-duty flare gun from her vest, not for signaling, but for chaos. She fired a magnesium flare straight into the helicopter's intake. The engine choked on the sparks, and the chopper began to spiral out of control. "That's one disconnect," Eleanor cheered. But the peak was still miles away, and the air was getting thinner. Cyclone was starting to huff, his breath coming out in massive clouds of steam. Teddy, too, was looking drained. The cold was attacking his neural processor. "Hang in there, boys," Eleanor whispered, leaning low over Cyclone's neck. "We're almost at the final boss." They reached the summit. The comm tower stood there like a giant metal needle, surrounded by a squad of elite guards in exoskeletons. In the center of them stood a man in a white fur coat, the Wolf. "Eleanor," the Wolf said, his voice smooth and menacing, "you've put on a great show, but you're out of time. Give me the dog, and I'll make your death quick." Eleanor pulled out the USB drive Klaus had given her. "How about I open source your whole project?" "Kill them," the Wolf commanded. The exoskeleton guards moved in, their metal joints whirring. It looked like the end of the line. But then Teddy let out a bark that wasn't a bark. It was a digital scream that jammed every electronic device within a mile. The guard suits locked up. The Wolf's tablet fried. "Jax, upload!" Eleanor screamed, throwing the USB into the tower's port. "Upload 10%, 40%, 90%, complete." Suddenly, every horse and dog in the valley below stopped. Their eyes glowed blue, then turned back to normal. The neural links were shattered. They weren't weapons anymore. They were free. You ruined it," the Wolf shrieked, pulling out a sidearm. The stallion let out a disrespectful neigh and kicked a massive pile of snow and ice straight onto the Wolf, burying him in a mini avalanche. "Consider yourself cancelled," Eleanor said, looking down at the mess. As the sun began to rise over the Alps, the Wolf's empire was crumbling in the valley below. But Eleanor noticed something on the horizon. A fleet of unmarked black jets, even bigger than the ones before, was approaching. Jax's voice came over the radio, sounding terrified. The wolf wasn't the leader. He was just a middle manager. The global syndicate is coming to clean up the evidence, and that means deleting the entire mountain. Well, Eleanor said, patting Teddy's head as the dog looked at the sky. I guess we're not retiring today either. The sunrise over the Alps was looking straight up apocalyptic. Huge charcoal black syndicate jets were swarming the peaks like vultures circling a fresh kill. "El, this is not a drill. You gotta shake a leg." Jax's voice exploded over the radio, sounding beyond stressed. "Those jets are carrying thermal-busting missiles. They're about to delete this entire base camp to wipe out every single trace of Project Chimera. We need to get Ghost, like right now." Grandma Eleanor glanced at the wolf, who was still half buried in the snow, then looked at Teddy. Teddy's ears were twitching. His predictive AI was already scanning the sky, pinpointing exactly where the next strike was gonna land. "Keep your head on a swivel, Jax," Elle said, tightening her Stetson hat. "If they've locked down the sky, we're going underground. Klaus, where are those old mining tunnels you mentioned?" Klaus pointed to a rusted iron hatch hidden behind a massive sheet of ice. "These tunnels lead straight to the Italian border, but the path is totaled and the oxygen is low-key, non-existent." "Better than being a target for a missile," Elle said, patting Cyclone's neck. "Let's go, boy. One last clutch performance for the books." As they ducked into the hatch, a thunderous boom shook the entire mountain. The syndicate had just nuked the summit. The tunnel walls started shaking like jello. It was pitch black, but Teddy's eyes began to emit a soft blue glow, acting like a high-tech flashlight. He was navigating like a pro, while Cyclone's hooves kicked up sparks against the rocky floor. "Syndicate tactical drones just entered the tunnel," Jax warned. "They're tracking your heat signature." "Jax, can you nerf them?" Elle shouted over the echoing roar of the drones. "I'm trying to bypass their firewall, but it's thicker than a bowl of oatmeal. Just give me 30 seconds. Suddenly, 3 drones dropped from the ceiling, their red lasers aiming at Teddy. Without missing a beat, Teddy pulled a matrix move. He leaped off a wall, snatched the first drone in his jaws, and yeeted it straight into the second one. "Teddy, sweep the floor," Elle commanded. Suddenly, a massive boulder cracked from the ceiling, blocking the exit path. Cyclone didn't even hesitate. He charged and hit the rock with a pro-level shoulder tackle. The rock shattered, but Cyclone took a nasty scrape on his leg. "We're almost there," Klaus panted, pointing ahead to an ancient industrial elevator that led to the base of the mountain. But there was one final obstacle. The Syndicate's chief enforcer, a guy built like a fridge with a high-voltage electric sledgehammer, was standing in front of the lift. He looked like a level 100 boss. "You're not going anywhere, old woman," he growled, his hammer sparking. Elle pulled out the USB drive she'd snatched from the tower. "You think I'm just some grandma? I've already leaked your coordinates to every major news outlet and the international court. If you hit me, you're just proving the receipts are real." The enforcer hesitated, totally confused for a split second. That was the opening Elle needed. Teddy tripped the guy's ankles, and Cyclone delivered a disrespectful kick that sent the enforcer flying straight into the elevator shaft. "That's a massive W for the squad," Jax cheered over the radio. They piled into the lift and plummeted toward the base. As the doors opened at the bottom, Jax was waiting in a heavy-duty armored truck, tires spinning. "Get in! The Syndicate helicopters are making another pass, and they're looking to smoke us on the highway." The armored truck roared as Jax floored the gas, tires screaming against the icy mountain road. Behind them, 2 Syndicate Black Ops SUVs were tailgating with malicious intent, and a combat chopper was hovering above like a persistent glitch. "We're down bad on speed," Jax yelled, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Eleanor looked out the back window. The SUVs were equipped with harpoon launchers designed to flip the truck. "Not today, sweaties," she muttered. She looked at Cyclone, who was standing in the back of the open-top truck, and Teddy, who was perched on the roof like a furry hood ornament. "Teddy, target lock!" Teddy's eyes flashed that electric blue again. He calculated the wind speed and the vibration of the road. On his signal, Eleanor pulled the lever to the truck's emergency gravel dump. A massive wave of heavy rocks spilled onto the road, making the first SUV wipe out and flip into a spectacular explosion. "One down, one to go," Jax cheered. But the chopper above was the real final boss. It lowered its altitude, and a sniper aimed a neural clipper at Teddy. "They're trying to factory reset him," Eleanor realized. She grabbed a heavy-duty lasso, the one she'd used back on the Silver Ranch, and hooked it to a steel beam in the truck's bed. "Cyclone, I need that goat strength." As the truck sped under a low-hanging stone bridge, Eleanor threw the lasso with aimbot precision, snagging the chopper's landing skid. She tied the other end to Cyclone's reinforced harness. "Pull!" Cyclone dug his hooves into the metal floor of the truck. The sheer torque of the stallion against the speed of the truck yanked the helicopter downward. The pilot panicked, losing control as the chopper slammed into the side of the bridge. "That's a certified legendary move," Jax screamed. The Italian border was just a mile away, a line of bright lights and armored gates. Eleanor grabbed the radio. "Agent Miller, if you're listening, we're coming in hot with the receipts and a whole lot of smoke." The gates swung open. The truck drifted across the line just as the Syndicate's remaining forces retreated into the shadows. They had reached safe zone. 1 month later, the Silver Ranch was looking immaculate. With the $10 million prize money and the global fame, Eleanor had turned the place into the world's first sanctuary for the gifted. Eleanor was back on her porch, rocking a brand new pair of custom boots. Cyclone was roaming the fields, no longer a wild beast, but a legend who knew he was the boss. And Teddy? He was lying in the sun, but his ears were still twitching, his AI silently scanning for any sus activity. Jax walked up with a tablet. The news is trending again. The Global Syndicate has been disbanded, and Marcus Thorne is facing a life sentence without parole." "Good," Eleanor said, taking a sip of her coffee. "Finally, some peace and quiet." Just then, Teddy stood up and barked at a mysterious black drone hovering at the edge of the property. It dropped a small, glowing collar with a note. "Property of the lunar colony. The dog is needed for the space mission." Eleanor sighed, rubbing her forehead. "You gotta be kidding me. I guess the grind never stops." She looked at Teddy and Cyclone. "Ready to go to the moon, boys?" Teddy let out a confident bark. The sequel was buffering.